All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to a little July 4th or 4th of July stream for anyone that celebrates. For everyone else, it's just a normal day. Thursday stream to get back into the action. Bitcoin did end up breaking out above our 11.2 to 11.4K resistance. Just a really quick intro to what we're going to be looking at today. Remember, from Sunday to Monday, right, we had the breakdown from 11.2, just expecting that we'll drift lower, right? Kind of the supports that I picked out that we were looking at all week in the updates were 10.2 and 9.8. That's where we bounced from. First target was this 11.2, 11.4, with the condition being if we start having 4-hour closes above 11.4, we're probably ready to resume higher. So that's what we looked at in yesterday's stream. What do you know? We have a nice bounce, right? It isn't the massively kind of exciting bounce we had last time, which has led to, you know, a $2,000 move, a 20% move higher, but it's still pretty sizable. It's been a nice move so far, right? Up another $400-500 from 11.2 to 11.4. So we're going to look at Bitcoin right here. Thoughts on the trend, thoughts on whether or not this is just going to be, you know, our second kind of consecutive high or low. Right now, this is our first lower high, pardon me, right? So a lot of questions right now being thrown around on, is Bitcoin going to stop at 12K? Is this going to be our second lower high? Or what I'm going to kind of talk about is why a break above this level, to me, rather than trying to predict whether or not there's a lower high, obviously we're going to look at some of the action here, but rather than just trying to predict whether or not there's a lower high, I'd rather continue to follow the rule set, which has just been so helpful for not only the past 2 months, but also in the past week. It's helped catch another 2 trades. So above 11.4, I like Bitcoin. Right, I'll talk about, once again, why this is the invalidation level for me, how you could play a little bit tighter if you're not long and you want to get long, what I'm kind of looking at, to which would be the hint for more upside, all those things with Bitcoin. Macro understanding is what I'm going to cover next in like 5 or 6 minutes, and that's going to be, as long as Bitcoin, you know, once again it happened, and it almost felt bad saying this a day or two ago. I think I covered it on Tuesday about, you know, alt started to fade again. It's my opinion and my view on the market, my understanding that, you know, if Bitcoin got above 11.4, they were just going to continue to get hurt. And making that call on Tuesday wasn't as easy. Now, obviously, everyone's saying, you know, alts are down. Why would you be in alts? But being able to kind of recognize that if Bitcoin's going to break out, if Bitcoin has good momentum, and if it's not capped, that alts are going to get hurt. It sucks sometimes to do it, and to not, you know, be hunting down 5 trades and to want to, you know, I know a lot of people have that urge to trade, but sometimes it just makes sense. If alts are getting hurt, if Bitcoin's dominating and having such a good trend, what's the rush? One thing that I'm going to continue to bring up in all these videos is, what is the increased upside, or how much more money do you make if you really do, let's say, you know, the example I used yesterday was time the bottom on ADA. Like, how much more money do you actually make if you time the exact bottom when alts bounced on Saturday, Sunday, versus kind of waiting for confirmation, right? That's kind of the first question is, okay, maybe do I make another, if alts do bounce, do I, you know, maybe catch that 10% that no one else did? But also, what are you risking by jumping into alts and trying to catch the bottom every single time that Twitter tells you it's alt season, or whether or not, you know, you think it's going to bounce and it's going to be alt season, right? What are you risking every single time that happens? And oftentimes you're risking another 8 or 6% in a day drawdown. So I'm not going to make the argument that alts aren't cheap and that, you know, I know alts will eventually do good, but I just think the conditions in order for alts to do good would be Bitcoin has to stop having such positive momentum. Bitcoin would have to be at least ranging for a period, or, you know, this would kind of have to be a lower high, whatever it is. Bitcoin has to stop at just such a ridiculous uptrend. And until kind of that happens, I just think that the one-day bounces or the half-day bounces are just far less attractive and take on more risk than they offer reward. So we're going to look at that. There is one alt, though, before I jump into this. There is one alt that I do think deserves attention, and that's going to be Tezos. Kind of a unorthodox look, or for me to bring that up when my macro view is so negative kind of towards alts right now. And I've never traded Tezos. It's funny, I think everyone kind of has a certain group of coins they like to trade, or whether it's like 5 or 10 coins they always trade, and there's always kind of like one coin that you haven't traded before. I've never been on board the Tezos train, but I do think, given the news yesterday that I'm going to break down and talk about on here, and also the chart, my macro view on alts, as I've made clear since Tuesday, and we only talked about them for a day on Sunday or Monday, has just been, you know, you're benefiting right now by not being in them because they're all declining versus Bitcoin. it's not really worth the risk, and you can also kind of wait for confirmation. So usually I would avoid alts altogether, but I do think there's this opportunity, whether or not you want to trade it, whether or not I want to trade it, I think at least deserves your attention, if not solely based on the fact that I think this news is usually news for a coin, especially if it's just a micro news and the macro trend is down. I'm not too interested in. But in this case, I actually think this deserves your attention, and I'll talk about why. There's been kind of some thoughts about, how is Ethereum maintained its lead over every other protocol, and now people are kind of looking at Tezos and saying, if they are able to seal this deal, and they did, right, and now they have kind of a deal flow of $1 billion for STOs, a theme and kind of an idea that really hasn't taken off. It's been a bit of a dud. Does that put Tezos at a ridiculous advantage to other STO platforms and kind of to the STO wave? So much so that they would kind of be the clear leader going into that blue ocean of kind of a category in crypto that no one's been able to capture. So I want to look at Tezos. I think there's an opportunity here. Whether or not you want to play it, it'll be kind of a fun breakdown to look at. And yeah, that's all I have, guys. But mostly it's still going to be Bitcoin dominated. I love alts. I love to trade alts more than a lot of people. But Bitcoin is just making more money. And I say it every single day in here. I really like this new format, more so because sometimes in a Discord or in a Telegram or something, people are just hungry for ideas, and I see ideas on Twitter as well. People will just shoot out like 5 just because they like activity or any of that. But if it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make money, I'm not going to trade it. And right now, Bitcoin is just dominating alts. All right, let's get into the good stuff. So Bitcoin, quick refresher from yesterday. I think we've covered Sunday through yesterday enough. As yesterday was happening, right, Bitcoin was stuck right at this resistance, and 11.4 has been such an important pivot. The end of June, it's the level that once we broke out of, we had the explosive move. As we move back into it, it's been resistance, support over and over and over again, right? Just an important pivot. So as price was moving into this and pretty much trading in this zone for almost the entire day yesterday, the biggest, the last swing for me for Bitcoin, Tuesday, Wednesday, was up to here, and treating this as resistance, right, taking profit. The next condition was, right, as we're at this resistance, and as I kind of wrote about in the email, was whenever Bitcoin is trading in a range. So this is kind of the bottom of the range where we bounce from, and this is the top of the range, right? It's been resistance so many times. This is kind of the top of the range. This is resistance where we're at. The way that I view a range, if you're trying to kind of determine which way the trend is now ready to move for the following day, for the following 3 days, for the following 5 days, for the following 2 weeks, whatever it might be, is I'm often looking for a confirmed candle close above or below the range. All right, so thinking back to Tuesdays, we're trading at 9,800 or 10.2K. This wasn't like fun to watch or comforting to watch price trade through it, but as long as we're not having candle closes below 9,800, which we've looked at for the past couple of days, right, I view that as kind of resistance being respected. The opposite example that you can see, I'll try to find one, is when price first traded up into 11.2, into 11.2, and into 11.4. Right, all these closes happening right below. Let me zoom in a little bit. Right below kind of the resistance, it's being respected. Wick through, close below, being respected, and then immediately when we have the close above, that's kind of the signal that price ready to move higher. All right, so what we looked at in the stream yesterday was whether or not you were long, flat, looking to get long, anything like that. Kind of the view or the condition that would make me give the hint or understand that Bitcoin is probably ready to move higher. And this is not foolproof. I think some people, I talk about closes so much in here, I always want to reiterate, it's one approach. It's one strategy. It's a very easy one for me to illustrate, so I talk about it a lot because I use it. You can use anything. Sometimes using candle closes, people are like, they just can't get it, or they always catch a move late, or whatever it is, and I think it does more harm than it does good. For me, it's incredibly helpful, and I know it kind of helps some of you guys understand trend. Anyways, price is trading 11.4 yesterday, right? So the sign that we're actually ready to move higher and the condition for wanting to be long again, right? It happened yesterday, almost 4 or 6 hours before the end of the day, was the first close above 11.4, right? Exact same thing is back here. When we had that close above, now, it doesn't mean that we're guaranteed to get a move $2,000 straight up, right? What happened as we were looking in the stream yesterday was price is actually down 1 or 2%. But I kind of viewed it as noise as long as we kind of continued to stay above this level, and we did. And now we're up another $400 or $500. So to me, even if Bitcoin has halted at 12K, right? If you think about right now, this is the local high, or not the local high, that's the yearly high. I keep calling it the all-time high. It's not the all-time high at all. Right, this is the 2019 high. It's the local high of the entire kind of bull run for 2019. It's the highest we've been. Here's our first lower high. Right, just trying to understand structure, kind of being a little bit repetitive, but I think it helps. And then this is right now. I think the question that people are looking at, and anyone who's bearish here and is saying, "Wow, I don't want to be long." I think some people are anticipating that this is going to be the second lower high, right? Which would obviously be a bit of a red flag, considering if this was our high, this was our first lower high, and not only that, but we had our first kind of lower low. This low right here is lower than this low. Right? Some people are saying, ooh, this could kind of, what just happened here, a lower high followed by a lower low, could be the sign of the 2019 momentum is done and that the trend is going to shift, and now Bitcoin has to range, or Bitcoin has to have a much more significant pullback, whatever it is. Right? And that could be the case. I don't want to just outright dismiss it. I don't think that's the case, and even if it is, right, trying to predict that, I just think helps me a little bit less. I'm going to continue to follow the exact same rule set that's worked from 4100, 8400, 9800 until now, which is, since we did close above this key resistance level, this key pivot, now it's kind of, once again, it's my invalidation, right? So as long as price is trading above this zone that led to that another 15-20% pullback, I like staying long Bitcoin. I just prefer it. The trend is clearly up, and I don't really want to try to guess when the trend is over. I know that I'm probably going to miss some tops based on that, and I'm not saying that it doesn't make sense to look at resistance and try to take profit. I think that it is helpful, but rather than trying to pick the exact top and just understanding that Bitcoin still has positive momentum, Bitcoin was able to close through this key resistance, and right now I still think it looks good, especially if price can get through or get above kind of where we started the day. So right now, the way that I'm positioned in Bitcoin, I'm long. I still like being long. Where I'd be wrong and not want to be long anymore, kind of regardless of whether or not you're trading, but you just want to understand where things maybe start to look ugly, right? If Bitcoin starts to get back below this pivot, which I would expect to act as resistance, as support again, right? If Bitcoin actually trades down to 11.4 and this breaks, right, then I actually start worrying that this would be the first, the second consecutive lower high, and that maybe even a lower low is coming, right? That to me would signal, this breaking would signal that 2019 kind of bull run so far is over, and that this is kind of a huge market structure change, and that price is kind of ready to dribble off. I don't think that's the case, but this is my invalidation for that, right? If we get back down below 11.4, I wouldn't want to be long again, right? So until that happens, I do like being long, and I think the next trigger, or the next thing that actually has me excited for more upside with Bitcoin would be if we can actually start closing above this daily high, or daily open. So in the exact same way I used 11.4 yesterday, right? With our close, we had 11,450, and that was kind of the hint or the signal for me that price could actually continue higher. If we start trading for a fair amount of time, or we have a breakout, however you want to think about it, I like a candle closes. If we start getting above this kind of 1220 or 1250 area, I do think that we move higher. A couple of areas that I'd be targeting be at least like 12,400. I think this second resistance would make sense up here as well at 12,900. I'm not sure we'd get an equal high. So I'm kind of looking for, if price can actually get above this level, I'm really aiming for up here. And there's going to be like the 12,900. It's really our only daily resistance before the 2019 highs. Right, so hopefully if price can get above this 12,000 where we opened and started today, I do think that we run probably until at least 12,900. The most conservative target would be another $400. And right now, just based on the breakout yesterday, right, I'm willing to kind of let this thing run right back to where I'm long from, right back to entry. If it does, I'd be wrong. So if this thing does fade off, we get back down here, I'm not going to sit and pray that the price turns around and whatever it is, I'll just understand, okay, maybe this actually is a lower high. Maybe this thing actually is ready to turn over. Maybe Bitcoin does have to kind of coil and we have to have more sideways, or we have to kind of revert to the mean before we can continue. Right? I still wouldn't think that the entire bull market is over or anything like that. It would probably be a sign if this is the local top and we do start trading back below 11.4, 11.2, right, that at least things have to kind of reset for a while. I don't think that's going to be the case, but this is where I'd be wrong. That's how you manage risk. Right? For every single trade, whether you're long Bitcoin, whether you're short Bitcoin, whether you don't have a position, still kind of be thinking about, you know, different levels that you'd want to see hold, or what would happen if a certain level is crossed, right? If you have a 10% drop, what happens? Are you just panic selling? Do you even know what would like? Just having kind of a plan for each of those conditions, I think, puts you in a way better position. Even if your plan is sloppy or doesn't follow too much logic, I think it puts you in a way better position. All right, that's all I got for Bitcoin, guys. I still like being long. Once again, I'll let it run back to my entry. If I'm proven wrong, I'll get flat, and I'll wait for the next play on Bitcoin. Above 12K or above this daily open, start having hour 4 or hour 1 even closes above this 12K. I would think that we run at least 12.4, but really I'm targeting 12.9 and higher. It's been an excellent week to trade Bitcoin, and it's been a lot of fun covering with you guys. Continue to think the trend's up. You know, it's the exact same thing I've repeated a million times, and maybe even more than move slow. I want exposure to the trend, as much of it as I can. If a key support's broken, okay, I'll get flat, and I'll wait until the trend is strong enough that it's ready to resume. Right? I mean, it's really been textbook since Tuesday, waiting for the dip, getting a close above resistance, right? Trend's ready to resume. Very, very simple kind of approach that's working nice. Other than that, the view on alts, which is a bit painful for some people that are really waiting for alts to turn around, has been that even if alts are ready to bounce, or even if this is the bottom every single time we look at alts, in my opinion, I'd rather wait for them to confirm the entire market like we had on Sunday or Saturday, where, you know, Loom, we looked at a lot of these, and some of them even are still putting together okay days. But we looked at Loom, right, on Sunday. We looked at Loom and EOS on Saturday, Sunday, right? That was when almost the entire alt market kind of found a little bit of a bottom. Bitcoin was topping, and then they could run for 24 or 48 hours. Right? That has since stopped since Tuesday. Maybe they are getting a little bit of a bounce. I'm just not too interested in it. The reason why is if they are ready to bounce, if this is the bottom for alts, and Loom moves up, and EOS moves up, and ADA moves up, and everything moves up, I just think that I'd rather jump on the trend. I mean, just to exaggerate it, I would almost rather jump on the trend like, you know, 5 days later than trying to call the bottom every single day, and ADA and EOS and, you know, 99 out of 10 other alts that you could have bought today are all down another 6, 7, 8%. I just don't think that the risk reward is there. I think the added upside I get from trying to time the bottom, it doesn't make sense, at least for me. For some people, if you know, I know that the new Binance IEO is doing well today, right? So there's going to be like one. Link will do well. There's going to be 1 or 2 outliers, but for the most part, I'm still not interested in alts. I'm standing by that call. If Bitcoin does top out, one thing to note, if Bitcoin does top out, right, if this is actually the local top for Bitcoin, 12K, and things start to trend lower, we range here, we break, like whatever it is. If Bitcoin tops out here, that's kind of the first condition, first little hint in your head that it'd be, okay, Bitcoin stopped moving up. It's at least created the scenario or the condition that alts could do well. And whether they do well for a day or two, like they did Saturday, Sunday, whether they do well for the next week or two, that's dependent on whether or not Bitcoin is kind of ranging or moving down, as long as it's not moving higher, right? So if Bitcoin does top out, that's kind of the first thing that would tip me off and say, okay, you know, maybe over the next 24 or 48 hours, I monitor Bitcoin. And if it really has found a local top, okay, maybe I have now a window of 2 days or a week or whatever it is to trade those alts. So as long as that's happening, I'm generally not interested. There is one coin that I'm going to look at. Once again, this is never advice, just like my Bitcoin trades, but I do just want to highlight key themes or exciting setups or things that I'm watching in case you're interested. Tezos, if you're unfamiliar, I've never traded it, just kind of tracked it from a distance. Tezos finally got, it looks like a deal. It's not, I don't think it's an investment. It's a plan for a large bank in Brazil, and also I think an investment group. Dubai-based asset management firm. So an investment group, you can kind of think of them as a really large fund, and then also a bank in Brazil. I think Tim Draper is also playing along or helping kind of orchestrate this deal. They had $1 billion deal flow coming through to Tezos. If you haven't been tracking STOs, you're saying, what's an STO, or how does that relate to ICOs, all that. If you haven't tracked the STO theme, it was very, very hyped going into 2018. A lot of people thought that once ICOs were kind of done, or now that the hype has died for ICOs, and a lot of people realized that you don't have any recourse, it was unsustainable, people were getting shady discounts, retail kind of caught on, right? Things were just getting dumped in the open market. Once people realized the ICO model wasn't too attractive, in early 2018, me included, thought that STOs would be pretty big. Now, what STOs are, if you're unfamiliar, before I dive into the Tezos chart, is it's a security token offering. So it could be for a stock of a company that's already a stock, or maybe a property that's looking to raise money, like a real estate investment trust. It could be anything that actually is a security and actually does follow securities laws, and then you are actually granted ownership of that company. It's literally would act as a share of a stock, or a share in a REIT, a real estate investment trust, or a share in anything. It's an actual security. It's just put on a blockchain, right? And what protocol would these things run on, and why that was could be such a big idea still, is if it does take off, it would allow companies to not only just raise money and be traded maybe on the New York Stock Exchange, and then other countries or other people can't trade that, but it would allow these things to be traded globally, 24/7. It would also allow greater liquidity pools. You can code in whether or not if someone was accredited into their account, then when they connect and interact with the blockchain, immediately it would be lower compliance costs. All these types of things. So in summary, STOs have been a very cool idea, but for the most part they've flopped. And Tezos, once again, is going to be that protocol which these things could interact on and trade on, right? So the news, what it's caused with Tezos, as I'm looking at this, generally if alts are doing very poorly, even if there's really good news for one coin, it's not going to interest me too much. The reason I'm actually interested in Tezos is because if you guys remember when Tezos started running back in March, right? Before we kind of look at where we are today, most alts were doing terribly up until December. This is when Bitcoin bottomed, and actually quite a few alts did well. And then from the period of January until like March 1st, right, when Bitcoin eventually took off, right, a lot of alts did very, very well. So this little time period here, I'm going to just get all these lines out of here. Right, this time period from pretty much January until April, right, almost every alt did very, very well versus Bitcoin. Not just Tezos, right? But I'm just trying to highlight that area. After Tezos, and this was by far one of the most impressive runs out of a lot of alts. Most alts did like 30 or 40 or 50% back in February, March. Tezos went like 150%, and a lot of people were calling it like a Twitter orchestrated pump and dump and all this stuff. I don't think that's the case at all. After it topped out, though, it's retraced significantly, and it's pretty much to where it started, or its lowest point, all of 2019, all of 2018, so it's all-time low. And it got right below there, and now since the news, I think today, it's up 4% today. From the bottom, it's up already 15, 20%. A couple of levels here that really interest me, just keeping in mind kind of our all-time high for Tezos, or where it pumped to earlier this year, and also keeping in mind where it started 2019. This is kind of where it's pumped to, right? This is when a ton of alts were doing well before Bitcoin took off. Right? Bitcoin took off April 1st, and obviously it's caused kind of a slaughter for alts. As this thing rises, a couple levels that stick out to me that were important before it took off. Right? This is that first level. This support. Oh, the support in here. You have one touch, you have two touches, third touch right before we take off, and then this is really kind of where price is also kind of that close. Right? So as price drifted back into this area, it eventually took off from here. This support right here kind of played that role. 9,800 sats or 9.8 thousand sats. Right? So that support really stands out to me, and then obviously the all-time low support as well. Right now, price is only about 4% above this support that we took off from. So I know that all alts are doing quite poorly, and I'm not excited at all about trading alts. I've barely even covered them, and I think in every single email I've talked about why I don't think it makes sense. But in this one scenario, right, I think sometimes it can make sense at least for me, this is kind of how I'm approaching it. I understand that most alts are going to underperform Bitcoin, especially if Bitcoin continues to move up. Right? If Bitcoin continues to move higher and it doesn't top out right here, right, as has been the case for the past 2 months, if Bitcoin continues to move up, and it moves up today, right, it's going to outperform all alts, and most alts are going to sell off. I imagine Tezos would be included in there. But since, this, I think it was considerably bullish news that came out about Tezos getting that $1 billion deal flow and potentially now being kind of the market leader, the clear market leader in the STO space, it makes me think about, Ethereum, which a lot of people are saying, this protocol is going to kill Ethereum, or another protocol is going to kill Ethereum, but Ethereum has such a lead that they've been able to maintain that lead. This deal actually might kind of put Tezos in a similar situation. So I think it's considerably positive news. I'm not very excited still about alts. If Bitcoin does kind of top out right now, I get a lot more excited about alts. And since I don't really have any alt exposure, other than what I'm looking to trade, to me, I'm going to take a chance on this, or I think that it could see some upside. If Bitcoin does take off and most alts get hurt, I think this one maybe gets hurt a little bit less. So the way that I'm playing this, really as long as price continues to close above this 8,800, which was kind of our all-time low before this level, right? So I'm giving it about, right, I'd be wrong if we're about 15 to 18% lower. So just kind of playing it with a smaller position. I want to see this low hold. And where I'm aiming, two resistances that really stick out to me are right here, which is about 30% higher. You can see this pivot, pretty similar to Bitcoin actually at 11.4. Right. So if price can move up, where I would expect some selling pressure to happen is about 40% higher. Right? I really kind of like this 15,000 sat range as kind of the first area would see some selling pressure, maybe slightly lower, maybe 14,750. So Tezos is pretty interesting to me on a move 30 or 40% higher. Right? I like being long until then. And then also, whoa, lost my mouse. If it can break out of there, obviously I would like to let it run longer. And whether that's previous 2019 highs, whether that's only a little bit higher up to 20.8 thousand sats, whatever it is, I don't want to get too excited about this. I don't want to have FOMO or hype or anything about this. I just think that this news is considerable. Usually I ignore news when I'm pretty bearish on alts for one individual alt, but in this case, I think the news is substantial. And since I'm not trading any other alts, I'm kind of am willing to take the risk on one or two, right? With the expectation that sure, it might underperform Bitcoin if Bitcoin takes off, and I might have my 15% loss, right? Or you could obviously play it tighter as well, 5% loss, whatever you want to do. I could be wrong on this, right? Bitcoin could outperform. But if Bitcoin does kind of top out, it's a nice way to hedge against, right? If Bitcoin stops performing so well and some alts do well, it's kind of like I'm able to capture some of that upside. I'm not actively trading alts or most alts because I think that that's a lower probability and I'd rather wait for confirmation. But in this case, where it's kind of a news-driven event, and also it actually could do well if the news is strong enough and well received, I like Tezos, right? So I'm looking to run it up to at least 15,000 sats with a 40% move, 1450. And I'm willing to give it, whether 10, 12, 15% down. Right? I like that play on Tezos. So once again, not advice, but I do just want to walk you through a theme there, or an idea, which is pretty interesting. And also to illustrate, right, there's some people that are trading alts still every single day, and some guys are killing it. But if you're going to play them, I think it is worth thinking about, how many alts do you need playing at once right now? Are all alts doing well? If they're not doing well, then, are you picking the 1 out of 10 that is going to do well? Or, different things like that, right? So anyways, that's the whole stream, guys. Bitcoin, the view now that we're back above 11.4 to wrap things up, right? To put the entire week in recap right now. Started the week at 11.4 with the expectation that now that we're below it, I want to wait until 10.2 or 9,800 to be a buyer. Right? That turned out to literally be the local low. I want to run it to 11.2, 11.4. If we get above 11.4, then I once again think Bitcoin can continue to trend higher. Right? I'm not trying to predict anything. I'm just having a simple rule of if resistance is broken, if we can break out of this range, I think we move higher. Right? And so far, we're $400, $300 higher. Right? Now, if as long really as Bitcoin does stay above 11.4, right, or this level that we just broke out of, generally, I'm just going to think the trend is up, and hopefully I can just be exposed to it as long as I can. I think there could be some selling pressure at 12.3. I think there could be some selling pressure at 12.9. I'm just a lot less concerned and occupied and spending time on trying to time the exact top. Whereas if you go back to 5,500 breakout, if you go back to the 8,400 breakout, if you go back to the 9,800 breakout, or the original kind of 11.2 breakout, I'm just trying to identify areas or conditions where price moved above this, right? I think it probably makes sense. I think it probably makes sense to be exposed long. And yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got for Bitcoin. If we get to 11.4, 11.5, then all of a sudden I start thinking I'm wrong, and I probably shouldn't be long anymore, right? That's all I got on the Bitcoin side of things. And then the Tezos, I at least think deserves your attention if you're not paying attention to it already, right? I think it's a pretty interesting opportunity. I'm not that excited about alts, although in this scenario or in this situation, where did it go? I do like it. Where the heck is Tezos? Bitcoin's mesmerizing me. Right? I do like Tezos as long as we're really definitely above 9,500 sats. Definitely as long as we're above 8,800 sats. I'm looking for price to run to almost 15,000 sats. Right? And that's all I got, guys. Have a good 4th of July. Be safe if you're celebrating. Take it easy. Stay well. Enjoy your weekends. I will see you guys tomorrow, same time. All right? Peace out.